Now, economic growth is on the up, but economists have warned South Africans not to get too excited. They say the 3% GDP growth experience in the second quarter of this year is not enough to tackle unemployment. To discuss this now, joining me in the studio is Standard Bank economist Shireen Darmalingam. Shireen, thank you very much for your time, for coming in. Okay, let's just look at this number, 3% up in the second quarter of the year of GDP growth. What drove this growth? What sectors were behind it?
Well done, that number was very positive, but what we are seeing is that the manufacturing sector turned around from what we saw in the first quarter and contributed quite positively to the GDP numbers, contributing about 1.7% of the total 3% annualized number that we saw. We also saw the finance, real estate and business services sector contribute quite stellarly as well, contributing 0.8% percentage points to that 3% growth. And what we are seeing, though, is the fact that the primary sector, which adds about 7% of total GDP, did decline in the second quarter of this year compared to the first quarter.
And mining sits in that sector, primary
yes,
sector.
Indeed,
and we've
mining
seen the
sector
problems we've had. I'm sure the labour unrest has contributed to that, do you
Yes,
think?
indeed, it has contributed to that. And what we are concerned about is the fact that there may possibly be some spillover effects into the third quarter. And what we cannot really discount at this point in time is that those spillover effects could obviously potentially lead to spillover effects into other areas of the economy. So we can't really discount that the third quarter could potentially be slightly weaker than what we saw in the second.
Especially now, this morning we're reporting that the National Union of Mine Workers has not accepted the latest wage offer by the gold producers. The gold mining sector could be seeing a strike. The fact that the primary sector is underperforming, so to speak, and is under pressure at the moment is not good news for our efforts as a country to improve the rate of our GDP growth.
No, it's not really good news. But if you just look at the contribution to total GDP, it's only about 7%. What we are concerned about is that there could potentially be a turnaround in the manufacturing sector. We already saw that the automobile manufacturers have also gone on strike, and it's costing the economy about 600 million per day. There's also concerns that it could spill over, as I mentioned earlier, into the tertiary sector of the economy, and the tertiary sector contributes about more than 2/3 or close to 2/3 of the total economy. So there is concerns that both the secondary and the tertiary sectors could pressure GDP growth lower in the third quarter.
While we're breathing a sigh of relief and showing a little bit of happiness about the 3% for the second quarter, it's nowhere near enough. Africa's average growth rate currently is about 5%. We are lagging behind that. Emerging economies currently are growing anywhere between 4 and 6%. What should we be doing? If you were giving advice, what should we be doing to improve and just get it up? Because we need that growth for employment.
Yes, indeed. As you mentioned, the employment numbers, we need to get that up, but you need growth for employment and you need employment for growth, and we're not really seeing that coming through. We saw in the manufacturing sector, we're only seeing very slight or rather a small net positive growth coming through. We saw in the mining sector in the second quarter that was also slightly positive, but with the strike activity and industrial action from both the mining and manufacturing sectors, we could see those numbers being pressured quite significantly in the third and fourth quarters, as the industrial action is normally expected in the third and fourth quarters.
So knowing what we know today and just looking at all the various factors, you're not optimistic that our third quarter might go above 3% or at least maintain 3%?
In fact, we're more on the pessimistic side. We're thinking GDP growth could potentially be sub 3% in the third and fourth quarters of this year. And because of that, we have revised our GDP numbers slightly down from the initial 2.3% average that we've had for this year. So we're looking more or less in the region of about 2.1, 2.2% for this year. But what again is a big concern is the fact that the unemployment rate could have around the 25% level for some time.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Standard Bank macroeconomist strategist Shireen Darmalingam.
News that moves. eNCA.com.